Welcome to the Home Team Sacramento podcast. I'm Josh Takimoto, and today we have former Folsom High School in Cal Poly quarterback, coach, and mortgage loan consultant Dano Graves. What's going on, Coach?
Not much, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Josh. I'm looking forward to doing this and just giving back to the Sacramento community and building connections with everyone out there. It's been a while since I've been involved in the sports scene, but I've always been looking for ways to just always stay involved, really. So I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it, man. And I just want to reiterate, I fumbled that intro so poorly. He is the former Folsom High School and Cal Poly quarterback. Man, I just jacked up your bio. But that's okay. We're going to get into it right now so you can fully explain your entire background. But every once in a while, I fumble the ball there. So hopefully everybody got that. But tell me a little bit, man. We like to start off the podcast, especially with new guests. Tell me a little bit about your athletic background, your coaching background. Like I said, you are alumni of Folsom High School, and anybody in the NorCal area knows Folsom High School. Especially now, the reputation is pretty insane, and the program over there is pretty wild. And I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you were kind of at the beginning of when it really started. I mean, really growing. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah, we were at the beginning. Yeah, I mean, Folsom won a section title back in 1980, but that was well before I started playing. But yeah, man, to try to answer this quickly, so I started playing for the Folsom Junior Bulldogs when I was 8 years old, and we went all through the youth program looking up to the high school players. But Folsom football, at least at the high school level, wasn't much to write home about. But we had our aspirations to be great. I mean, we got together as a group of guys at the age of 8, most of us, and then we had just played together our whole, essentially, our careers in Folsom. And then that movie Friday Night Lights came out. I want to say it
Yeah.
was around 2007. No, sorry, earlier than that. I think it was 2005. I was in seventh grade. I remember all my buddies and I were like, "That's what we want to do. We want to win the state championship." And mind you, I don't even think the state of California had state bowls at that time.
I don't think so.
We watched that movie. We're like, we just want to be the best. We
Yeah.
don't, whatever that is, whatever our max is, we want to aspire to reach that goal. So yeah, I went through the youth program, and then went up on to high school. Sophomore year, I started playing varsity. My brother was the quarterback at that time, and that was the first time in 20 years that we had made playoffs. And
Wow.
we ended up losing in the first round to Napa. But that following year, my junior year, that's when I became the starting quarterback. We made it pretty deep in playoffs. I think we were one game shy of the section championship, where we played Del Oro. We were up 35-7. They came back in the second half to beat us, going for two at the very end with seconds left. And then, the following year, we went on to state and we won. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of my career at the high school level. From there, I went to university. Sorry, not the university. I went to the Air Force Academy. I was there for a year and a half, and then transferred to Cal Poly, where I finished out my career, started for 2 years, and then after that became a coach. And I coached 3 seasons as the quarterback coach at Cal Poly.
Interesting. I have so many questions just based off of what you just said. But let me ask you this, since we're talking about the coaching thing, was it, because you went right back into coaching once you were done playing. Was that a difficult thing? Because I'm always fascinated when athletes go back to coach immediately after their career is over, because sometimes you get into that weird situation where there's so much raw passion that they have a tough time transitioning to being a coach, because they can't get on the field anymore.
Right.
They still have all that raw passion. It's like they want to strangle their players. Like, why don't you just get it? Like, you should, like, let me do it for you. You know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
some guys like slide into that role really easily. So what was that transition like for you?
I want to say it was yes and no as far as it being easy. Um, to say it was easy was mainly due to the fact that I was like a 6 year senior by the
Hmm.
time I was a senior quarterback on the team, and I was more of a player's coach.
Sure.
I was already kind of a coach on the field, and it was the same way in high school. I mean, just with the system that we ran and being the quarterback, you have to know everyone's role. If someone's off slightly, you have to correct them. You have to coach them up. If it's something if it's knowledge that you have in your head, it's your responsibility as the quarterback to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that they're executing their role within that specific scheme correctly. So making that transition in that aspect was actually extremely easy. I knew the playbook like the back of my hand, um, and all the relationships I had with the players were great. They all respected me because I was also on the front lines with them in battle. So that went smoothly. I would say the toughest part was kind of on the same note is that I knew these guys and they were my teammates. So
Right.
having to transition, I had to completely, essentially, separate myself from the players. If it's a Thursday night, Friday night, you know what I mean. I had to really. That was the toughest part because some of these guys were only a couple of years younger than I was, but I had to really separate myself from them socially in order to kind of start building the foundation for my career as a coach.
Got it. And then, so you coached for 3 years. I mean, was there a reason why you decided not to coach anymore, or come back and coach at the high school level, or do you have plans on coaching again at some point?
I do have plans on coaching at some point. Coach Paul Doherty over at Folsom High School, he reaches out to me every year, sometimes once a year, especially right before season.
Yeah, it sounds like a
So I
coach.
know it's inevitable that I'm going to get back into it. I think at the time when I left, I had just met my wife, and she was a beach volleyball player at Cal Poly. And we knew immediately that we were going to get married. We both had the same goals and aspirations in life to have a family and settle down. And I quickly saw that the college coaching lifestyle can be similar to that of someone in the military, where you're moving all across the country.
Yeah.
So for where we were at, I knew I loved coaching, but I was also ready to kind of do the whole family man thing. And it just so happened that I was already getting my real estate license when I was coaching because I know I just wanted to have it in general. And meanwhile, my brother was already back in Folsom, California, kind of recruiting me to come back home and work with him and with the brokerage that we work at now as a loan consultant. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of why I got out of it. But I know I will definitely get back into it soon here.
That's awesome. That's so funny too, man. Like, I feel like that is a very much a coach thing when they want that athlete to come back to coach. It's not just a one-time ask. It's every
Right.
time they see him at the store. Hey, when you coming back? Hey, they see him in the community somewhere every single year. So that's, man.
Such a slippery slope too, because Torty, man, he's like, all right, come back, just come out for one day, come out for one practice, just come speak to them, and then
Right.
it's quickly like, all right, now 2 times a week, or why don't you
Yeah.
just come to Saturday morning film session? You know what I mean? It's a really slippery slope because once you take one step, just being an ex player and a former coach, it's you want to win, and if you
Right.
see that something's off, or if you see that there can be improvements in one aspect of another, you're going to want to you're not going to be able to sleep at night until you fix that or correct that.
Right. That's, yeah, that is a slippery slope. I mean, pretty soon you're wearing the headset up in the booth calling plays.
Exactly.
It's like, what happened? I thought it was a one-time thing. That's
Right.
funny, man. Um, what, so again, going from like obviously you played at a high level, and it's funny too, man. Like, my family all went to Castro High School, and one of my brothers is about your age. He's probably maybe 3 or 4 years younger, but he was in high school at the same time. And so he saw you play. And, it was interesting because I feel like back in the day, he's like, man, you got to see this dude play. And I think you guys played Cass at one point. I can't imagine it was a great game at that point. That was probably a rough year for them. But I feel like, and if he's gonna hate me if I get this wrong, but I feel like he was comparing you because it was like Tebow was big around that time, and I feel like there was a little bit of a comparison there. Did you get that comparison a lot?
Not often. Um, no, I didn't really get many comparisons, or at least if
Really?
people were comparing me, I never heard about what that comp was. I think a lot of people saw me similar to Kyler Murray, because I think Kyler Murray was a couple of years or a year after I was, but we had similar styles in high school.
Sure.
But there weren't many quarterbacks my size at all at the college level at that time. So that it was kind of the beginning of that era as well, where being slightly smaller was okay. I actually almost missed that window. I was almost a little too early,
Hmm.
if I were to look back at it. Um, yeah.
That's interesting that you say that there weren't that many comparisons, because I feel like now it's all the time. Doesn't matter what age the kid's
Yeah.
at. It's like they're just compared to someone all the time, and then all the way, through the draft, they're getting those comparisons. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was wild. 'Cause I remember him talking about like, hey man, you got to see this dude play because he's a beast. And then I saw you play. I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is pretty impressive. So, and like I said, it's crazy to think too, man, that like that was at the beginning, kind of the beginning of when Folsom really started going on this incredible run they've been on. So, like when you think back to that, like I mean, you have a pretty big chapter in the history of the Folsom High School football program. Like, do you ever think about it, or is that a weird thought to think about?
Um, Not necessarily, and it's interesting to think about because all my buddies from that from my class that we all played together, we don't necessarily live in the glory days as much as one might think, and we
Yeah.
always we joke about that we don't really live in the glory days, but we because of what we accomplished, it gives us this sense of we're just extremely proud to be alumni. And I think it builds the alumni portion of the Bulldog Nation, so to speak, and it builds that up. And we're much more proud to be a part of that. And even the classes below us, that one state, we're really close with them as well, just in communication and following up with games. And we're always in a group chat, hey, this game's, here's the link to the game tonight. They're playing De La Salle or whatever it may be. We're watching very closely, so I think because of our success, it makes us proud alumni, and we really stay up to date with what's going on. We know where every kid has offers and everything. But yeah, man, we were really proud to just be alumni.
Which is cool, man. And I feel like that's how it should be for every program. I get like not every program can win, and not every program can have, the same type of reputation that Folsom does. But like that's one of the cool things about programs that, I mean, I've been to Del Oro a handful of times, and that community, is in love with Del Oro football, and they have a really cool setup there. I mean, I could name a bunch of other schools that have a great sense of tradition. They have a great sense of community. So, I mean, and I was thinking about this today, man. It's kind of cool, especially with what you're doing now as a professional in the world of real estate. Sometimes I feel like we think about networking and connecting with people once we get to college, right? And once you get to college,
Right.
you start doing internships, connecting with people. But really, you can make a case that as a high school athlete in a smaller community, you're actually starting your networking right then and there. Because if you have a great reputation as an athlete at that point, and then you go off and do college and you come back, people are going to remember your name and they're going to remember your reputation. So if you came back to your hometown, there's a good chance that people are going to remember that and think, hey, they're going to want to connect with you, help you out. Maybe it was a job offer here or there.
Right.
So do you feel like the reputation that you had as a player in high school has carried through all the way to this point now, where you're a professional in this community and doing all the stuff you're doing now?
100%, Josh. There's so much truth to that. With what I do as a mortgage broker, a lot of my business partners are real estate agents, and I want to say about 30-40% of the real estate agents that I work with were athletes in the Sacramento area that
Really?
either played against or maybe were a year or a couple years above or below me that recognized my name. I recognized their name or their family name. And we're like, hey, we both, you were at Del Oro, you were at Rockland, we played against each other. Do you remember this game? And that's kind of conversation started right there. We built that connection and we're able to do business together. We're former athletes. We're competitive. We want to do, go above and beyond to serve our clients and stay competitive in the market. So just being former athletes in this area and finding other former athletes in the same industry as you, it's helped my business grow. It's probably helped their businesses grow. There's just so much truth to that.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's one of my favorite parts. And sometimes I feel like it's underrated with high school sports is the importance of the community.
Right.
High school sports is huge because, and like you see it, like you saw again, Friday Night Lights, right? In Texas, football's just a different beast. Everything shuts down. Friday night football is what happens on Friday nights. That's it. And
Right.
so I feel like, I mean, you get the same thing. Like I know there's been so many times, man, when I've driven up 50 on a Friday night and I see the lights from the stadium and you see all the people there and it's a community event. Like people really get into it. So, I mean, do you like as a player, like if you can think back and kind of put yourself back in your shoes as a player, do you feel that support from the community or is that something that you appreciate more as you get older and kind of think back to those days?
Both. So yes, as a player, I remember the support from the community kind of growing with our success, because Folsom winning at the time was new.
Sure.
Um, it was new, at least at the high school level. I mean, us growing up, we won championship after championship, so it was an expectation to us. But when we got to the varsity level, that was that was Friday Night Lights for the town, and we really did feel the support from them. They travel with us and everything. I think now when I look at it, I think a lot of the community and fan base is numb, so to speak, to the success of Folsom High School. It's like, oh, Folsom High School's, they won, they just beat De La Salle again,
Sure.
or they're going to state again. I mean, yes, it's impressive, and yes, there's support, but it's kind of an expectation now.
Yeah.
Whereas back when we were playing, it was new and it was exciting. At least that's the way it felt to me.
Sure.
I think what's really important with the community support nowadays is just the fact that the high school team, the Folsom high school team, is playing really good competition now. They're traveling to LA, they're traveling to De La Salle every other year. They've had talks about playing Bishop Gorman in Nevada.
Right.
They have plans to go travel to Hawaii. And if they do go to state, that's a whole nother trip in itself down to LA. So that costs money.
Yeah.
And Folsom's not a private school,
Right.
a public school, so all that has to be self-funded. And I know, Coach Doherty works his ass off to fundraise and whatnot, but the support from the community in that aspect is huge nowadays because as Folsom continues to build their name, continues to try to play these top-ranked teams in the nation, there's a financial portion to that that's very important being a public school.
Right. Well, that's why I've always told, anytime I've had a chance to talk to athletes, high school athletes especially, and I know a lot of coaches that promote this message is like, man, the reputation that you carry into the community is huge because, if you do something dumb in the community, that has a bigger effect on the program than you think. It has a bigger effect
Right.
on your own reputation as a human being, as a person, but even just as the program, like they see someone, doing something stupid, they're wearing the Folsom shirt like yourself. It's like they automatically associate that with the football program or the sports program or the school. And it can leave a bad taste in someone's mouth. And then they're not as willing to support. So I mean, sometimes I think we kind of brush over it, but like the community aspect of it, for all the reasons you just said, are huge, huge for high school sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so if you could go back and go back in time, and if you could talk to your younger self, the Dano who's getting ready to go into college for the first time, what was the biggest thing that surprised you, thinking back to those days? And then what would be one piece of advice you would want to give yourself at that time?
So the biggest surprise to me, is probably a pretty common answer to most football players that move on from high school to college, and that's just the speed of the game.
Sure.
Everyone is fast, and especially when you first make that transition, everyone is bigger than you are.
Sure.
So I'll give you pieces of advice that I would have given myself going into it. And the first one is right when you finish your senior year, your senior season, take a couple weeks, a month to let your body rest after the season, but then get right back into training. I think a lot of um, senior high school athletes graduate and then they're moving on to the next program at the college level, and they don't start training until that time comes. And it's so important to start building muscle, to do your speed training, to anything that you need to do to get yourself ready for that next level. Because that first camp going into college is a shock.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be if you're prepping yourself the right way. And then the other piece of advice that I would have given myself would be just to overcome your mindset in that when you're stepping onto the field with these college athletes, some of them are grown men, right? They're in their 20s and
Yeah.
they have a house off campus and whatnot. To not let that intimidate you, because it's just a mindset. And if you can just, kind of suppress that lack of confidence going in, you're an 18-year-old kid going into your first camp to play with these athletes. You just got to alter your mindset because you can play with them. It's really a mindset. There's a lot of psychological things that you can just overcome. Like, because by the time you're a junior or senior, your body is really not that much different. And if just looking back, it's like just come in with that mindset that you can play with anyone. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how big they are or whatnot. Then you can make it happen. So
How long do you think it took you to adjust to the speed of the game and the mentality and all that?
it was tough for me because I bounced around.
Sure.
I played in a junior college league at the Air Force prep school, and then I didn't really play for a while, and then I transferred to Cal Poly, and at that time I want to say I was 19, almost 20 years old. So when I got to Cal Poly, that adjustment, it kind of felt like that was my first really time getting into college football, but
Hmm.
I felt like I was ready to go. But there
Yeah.
was like, I want to say a year and a half, 2 years where I really wasn't playing that much football. So it was tough to say, how long it took me to adjust because I
Sure.
was in basic trainings and all that type of stuff at the Air Force Academy. Um,
Right.
so not that much football was actually played for me.
Gotcha. Now, was the Air Force or the Air Force Prep Academy, was that always the plan from the very beginning, or did you have other places you wanted to go, or what was the thought process when you had to make that decision?
I had opportunities elsewhere. And in hindsight, I wish I would have pursued those opportunities.
Hmm.
But Air Force did a really good job at recruiting me. And actually, the way they recruited me helped me in recruiting once I became a coach. But they were on me early my junior year. No one else was. They had faith in me. They had confidence in me. And then they just did a really good job staying in touch. So that recruiting aspect, really, they did a really good job. And then, a couple other schools came in late. Cal Poly offered me like a day or two before signing day my senior year. Um,
Hmm.
it was too late, but in hindsight, I wish I would have gone straight to Cal Poly out of high school, but just the timing didn't work out that way.
Got it. No, let me ask you this. I didn't look too much into your background as far as other sports. Did you play other sports in high school?
I did. I played baseball.
Okay, you played baseball. What
Yeah,
position?
I played baseball. Well, I pitched. I pitched my freshman year and my sophomore year, and then once I became the quarterback, Troy Taylor, actually
Yeah,
the quarterback, he did not let me pitch, which was probably for the better.
sure.
So I played my junior and senior year as at center field.
Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense. That's funny. I kind of forgot that he was the baseball coach there for a minute. And yeah, it makes sense that he would want to maybe shut that down a little bit.
right, right.
Yeah, interesting. Um, so if you could, looking back again at your high school career, and then maybe even for your college career too, what would you say is maybe your most like your greatest moment in your mind, or your most memorable moment, or the one like when you think back to like your biggest play, or your the thing that sticks out the most? What would you say that was?
I want to say it was that second game against Grant High School, our senior year at Sac State. There was, I want to say, about 22,000 fans. It was the redemption game. That at that time, that was the only team that we had lost to that season.
Yeah,
They embarrassed us on ESPN week 0, and we knew we could play with them. We just going into that game, we we didn't have the fundamentals of the game down, just the
Sure.
blocking, tackling, the simple things. We did not do a good job of prepping for that, whereas Grant did a really good job with that, and their coaches did a great job. But we knew we could play with them. So by the end of the year, in that section championship, we knew we could play with them. We knew we had come a long way fundamentally, and that was by far, even exceeded the state game. That was the best moment for me in my career, um, playing playing that redemption game. And I just remember so many students at our school doubted us. So many parents, so much of the faculty. Everyone was like, "Oh, you guys, you're going to get smacked again by Grant," and we were kind of the only ones that believed in ourselves. But yeah, that was just an atmosphere that I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine. I've never come close to anything like that in my own athletic career. Nothing even close to that. But it's man, I keep going back to it, but it's such a weird experience going to a Folsom game on a Friday night because it's so much. It just feels so much bigger than most other places around the area. And I forgot how many years ago. This is maybe like 5 years ago. I had the bright idea of trying to go to the Folsom De La Salle game. Didn't buy tickets ahead of time, and I knew the parking lot was crowded. I'm like, it'll be fine. And I literally go up to the desk and I said, "Can I get a ticket?" And she just laughed. She just started laughing. She didn't even say anything. She's like, "You know, there's no more tickets." All right. So
Right.
I had to go up on the hill, and which was still a cool experience. But it's like, man, there were so many people on the hill, so many people in the stadium. And like I said, I can't even imagine what it would have been like. I mean, like I said, it's just you're playing in a different experience than everybody else. Because you look at some of these games around the area, and there's like barely anybody in the stands. It's like you could hear a cricket, and there
Right.
it's like you can't. I mean, you can't hear anything. You can't hear yourself talk or think because it's
Right.
so many people. It's wild.
Yeah, no, that game, that second great game at Sac State definitely prepped me for college as
I
far as
bet.
atmosphere goes. I don't I want to say we might still have the record attendance at Sac State Stadium, and it was that game. Maybe that changed this last year as they went on their playoff run, but I think up until Sac State's recent success, I think we had the record in attendance. That's funny you say the hill up at Folsom High School. That's where I watch the games now. I'll take my dog up there because I literally live right around the corner from the stadium. I can hear the announcer from my front porch.
Oh, nice.
So I'll go over there, and it's just wild these days. Looking across, being on the visitor side, looking across to the home stands, and seeing the dog pack, and they have amps and they have these huge speakers, and everyone's painted, and they
Oh,
they have
dude, it's
um,
insane.
smoke machines and like a light show, and they're throwing I don't know what they're throwing, but they're throwing stuff
Yeah,
all over the place, and it's a full on concert. It
yeah.
was like that back when I was playing, but it's quite the experience going to a Folsom game these days.
Oh, 100%. It is funny because, like I said, the last time I was there, I was on the hill that you spoke of. And it is always funny because, if anybody's not familiar, it's like a marshy area up on that hill.
Yeah, yeah,
And the funniest thing to me is like when you look, like you obviously have the field over here. And when you look behind you, you just see all these lights, like this trail of lights going down this path. Like, where are they all going from? Like, where are they all going to? And then you realize there's a neighborhood that's connected
yeah,
on the other side. It looks bizarre though. It's like all these people just coming out of the woods and then going right back into the woods once the game's over. So it's an interesting experience.
yeah.
But so this is kind of a weird question. Like I said, I don't want to make it seem like I just have again, it's probably different when you experience it, but for me, being on the outside, just seeing, Folsom and kind of holding Folsom football in pretty high regard. Obviously, over the last however many years, since you stopped playing for them, I feel like the quarterback position has always been a huge focus. It always is, but I feel like specifically at Folsom, the number of just great quarterbacks you guys have had has been pretty impressive. Do people ever call on you to mentor or to have conversations with some of these guys that are younger than you that are just starting out? Because I imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I just feel like being the quarterback at Folsom is a little bit different than some other schools. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
it's different in so many ways. It's different in that it's so competitive
sure.
to get that starting role.
Yeah.
It's so known, I would say. It's so it's so public that starting quarterback job for Folsom High School is almost a guaranteed full ride scholarship somewhere.
Sure.
At this point, that's what it's become. So
Right.
it's so competitive, and you've got people coming in from various places moving into town to try to compete at an early age. So there's actually a passing academy, NorCal Passing Academy, that they
Yeah.
actually train right around the corner from my house as well. And I want to say there's 20 to 30 guys out there at a time, and they have different age groups from from eighth grade and younger, or the high school level. And there's kids out there training at the age of 10 years old in hopes to become that next Folsom quarterback. When you look at a guy like Jake Browning,
Right.
I remember when I was training with Troy Taylor, my sophomore, junior, senior year. Jake Browning was in sixth and seventh grade. We're talking 11, 12 years old, and
Yeah.
and back then Troy Taylor never took on quarterbacks that young, but he saw something in Jake. Jake was really mature for his age. He's always been, and he was really focused. I think Troy didn't want to spend time with kids that were there for daycare, so to speak.
Sure.
Jake Brown was focused and ambitious at a young age. But that's a common theme these days. I mean, there's so many young quarterbacks out there that start training now, and that have good head on their shoulders. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how competitive that quarterback job is.
Now we've talked a lot on this podcast and in previous podcasts that I've done about like being a multi-sport athlete, and there's a lot of benefits to being a multi-sport athlete. And but it seems like in a situation like that, it seems like they're, I mean, are they really, like, if they're starting the quarterback training and the quarterback process that young, do they tend to specialize early on, or are they still playing other sports too?
I would say they're playing other sports.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I think a lot of the passing academy, it's about once a week, sometimes twice a week. So it is a time commitment.
Sure.
Um, but I think at that point, I mean, I think just being in this town, and being in this town, especially, just football is so popular. That's what everyone wants to have success and be good at.
Right.
So if you live in these parts, then that's where you're going to put all your eggs. So
Yeah, just an interesting thing. Well, and I feel like when you were playing, it was, I mean, you had Facebook, MySpace, right, stuff like that. But I mean, you were still kind of before like the massive social media movement. I mean, it definitely wasn't what it is today. Are you grateful for that you missed that entire thing? Because I feel like that, I can't even imagine the amount of pressure. I mean, you're seeing your highlights on Max Preps and all of these different outlets, and it's like people have unfortunately they have more access to you, and they have more things they can say about you or to you on social media. But
uh,
you were a little bit before that, right?
yeah, I want to say I had just gotten Facebook like a week or two before that ESPN game my senior
Let's see,
year.
there you go. Yeah.
And a bunch of people, wanted friend requests, and I didn't even know who they were. I just remember that distinctly. Like, what is this Facebook thing?
Yeah.
But, I want to say it's a blessing. I'm glad that
Yeah.
social media wasn't around back when I played. Um, I think it could be a distraction.
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely has its pros and its cons. I think as an individual athlete, it can be distracting. It could be maybe mind altering in the fact is where you put your priorities, or your priorities into your image and your success as an individual and your offers, or are they with your team.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have experience with that, but maybe that's the case. I think there's also pros to it. I think for a program like Folsom High School, that's not a private school, that's a public school. I think all the content that's going out there right now on social media for Folsom High School is a form of indirect recruiting. You
Sure.
can't recruit at a public school, but if you just have a really cool social media page, and you see all the different uniform combinations, all the decal different combinations, the blue field, the dog pack, that's something that indirectly could make a young athlete want to come play for a program.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is, yeah, I mean, that's always the challenge with social media. There's so much good that can come from it, but
Right.
at the same time, in the wrong hands. I mean, I think the bottom line is we get too comfortable with it, right? Like it becomes so much a part of our regular everyday life that you just treat it like any other thing you would do, like taking a shower, washing your hands, driving. Like it just becomes that normal. And then you start saying stuff, wild stuff that you shouldn't be saying. And then all of a sudden, we've talked about that on this podcast before, that, it can lead you down some dark roads, unfortunately. And people lose scholarships, people lose, a lot, by posting the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing and having it caught on camera. So it's a wild thing. But yeah, I mean, I look at some of the athletes that, were big in this area before social media, and knowing some of them, it's like, that's probably good that you weren't around during that time, because I think your career could have been a little shorter. They lived a wild life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we definitely yeah, maybe I don't say anything about that, but we had
Yeah.
fun. We had fun as teammates.
Sure.
We were close. We were really close. We had a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And not being, sucked up in phones and whatnot.
Yeah.
That could have taken away from what we had as a group.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I think it's cool. I mean, it sounds like you're still close with some of the guys that you play with, and I feel like that's a common theme on this podcast too. Is that, you might be years and years removed from high school, but when you're on a solid team and you're on a team that has really good culture, those friendships actually last a long time. And a lot of those people remain connected, especially with social media now. It's easier to stay connected, but that's one of the best parts about sports, is that camaraderie and that team chemistry that's built, in a good program. Sometimes if it's a rough program or the coach isn't great, you don't get that as much. But if you have a solid program, even if you don't win that much, like
Right.
those friendships and those relationships last a long time.
Right. Yeah, no. I think we had great culture. I think culture is something that is part of every single program, whether it's a good culture or a bad culture. And I think culture in general is moving in one and two directions. It's either getting worse or it's getting better. I think our culture was always growing. We were always trying to get better as teammates. We're always trying to outdo each other competitively on the practice field to make each other better. And we all had the importance and our priorities were all straight. Um, but yeah, I mean, a great group of guys that I could go years without seeing any of them, and we have this instant connection because when you accomplish something at the highest level within your level within your division, um, and you win the championship, there's nothing for the rest of your life that can take that away. So you share that moment, you share that legacy with a group of guys that will always be there and will always be a part of who you are.
Yeah, that's well said. Um, oh man, I had another question for you. What was it? When's the last time you played? Like, is there ever the desire just to throw the pads on again and like get out there? Or like, are you doing flag football? How are you scratching the competitive itch?
That's so funny. So I haven't played, with pads in a long time, but it was just this last Saturday. Um, for my 30th birthday party, a few guys went out to Livermore Field, which is the youth field I grew up playing at,
Oh
and
yeah,
we played flag football.
nice.
Yeah, it was. I want to say it was 5-on-5, and we played 3 games, and I'm still sore. It's been like 4 days now, and I'm
Yeah,
still sore. But yeah, we'll go out and do pickup games every once in a while, and they're competitive. We'll get 4-on-4, 5-on-5, 2-by-2 concepts. We'll be calling plays. We'll be mixing coverages. We'll be rolling safeties. It's pretty high level stuff because we got a lot of my brothers out there. My cousin Marco, who played at Oak Ridge, was also a quarterback.
nice.
We got a lot of football IQ out at these pickup games.
That's awesome.
We're yeah, we're hand signals and all that. It's a good time.
Let me ask, you still got it?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah. For like 2 seconds at a time, I can go hard, but yeah, I'll need a breather. But yeah, it's interesting. Like being a quarterback, so much is in your mind, so much is a
Sure.
mind in the chest, and out there, my being able to read, decipher coverages, and make throws into windows. Um, all the timing's there in my head, but my body's ability to react to where I want to put the ball and how long it takes me to put my back foot in the ground and
Yeah,
close my shoulder, get the hips through, and get the ball there. It lags behind a little bit.
sure. Well, and I imagine that I don't know what your wife's reaction is when you get back home after these games, but I imagine like she sees you limping in and it's like, oh man, it's gonna be a long couple weeks for this guy.
Exactly. Yeah. No. And she's big on avoid don't take ibuprofen. She does dealing with it. She's like, I want you to get in the ice bath. She was a kines major at Cal Poly.
Nice.
She's all about the recovery and doing things before you go play to prevent things, which I always seem to forget to do.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
She's like, all right, let's jump in the cold pool or something. So
That's awesome. No, so it's I think no matter how old you get, no matter how far removed you are from the competitive days, whether it be high school or college, like anytime you get a chance to compete and play, like even if you know I'm going to pay the price for this, maybe even get injured in the middle of this, like you can't pass up the opportunity to do it. So I'm glad to hear, man, that you're still getting out there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard not to dive at certain points, and just try to find that inner self again, that inner youth, to make plays.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can't take that competitive nature out of the athlete. That being said, uh, you as a professional in the world of real estate, and like I said, being a mortgage loan consultant, you're still competitive. And I imagine that there's other elements of your athletic career that you've taken with you into the real world. So,
Right.
and that's one of our big things here is like how, we're playing a game that we love, we're playing a game that's fun. But as a coach, you're teaching these life lessons that hopefully through your sport, your athletes grasp this concept, and down the road they'll continue to apply it to everyday life, whether it's as a professional, whether it's they continue to play their sport at a high level. Maybe it's just when they're the leader of their family and their kids, whatever arena of life you may find yourself in. A lot of times these concepts and these disciplines you learn in sports can apply and can stay with you throughout your
Yeah.
entire life. So what are a couple of lessons that you feel like you've taken with you to this point now, where you're professional, you're a leader in the community? Like what are some of those lessons that you feel like apply now that you learned back in the day?
Yeah, man, I would say, just especially with what I do, it's very competitive. I'm self-employed, and there are good days and there are bad days. And it's something growing up playing sports that you have to learn to overcome adversity if you want to be successful. So for me, um, being a quarterback, there's going to be times where you don't execute on first and second down, but you still have third down to make it up, right? So I take that kind of philosophy into my daily work life, where you're not gonna complete the pass every single play, but you still have that next opportunity. So you can't get down on yourself. You can't be thinking in the past. You just got to right up, draw up the next play and snap the ball. And that's something that, being self-employed, that I really had to tap back into my former competitive edge in sports to make that analogy, to be okay with having failures, because starting a business and running your own business, there's no straight line to success. It's up and down, and it's about overcoming those adversities and learning from mistakes and growing from it.
Yeah. Well, I imagine, any athlete, it's going to benefit. The mentality is going to benefit them, but especially being a quarterback. I mean, like you said earlier, it's just this constant chess match in your head. So is that ever a challenge as a business person, where it's like, yeah, you're constantly thinking and you're looking at every, like the next move and the move after that. But then I imagine there's sometimes where it's just like a jumbled mess in there. It's like I gotta sort this out because I'm thinking too much. Is that accurate or no?
It can be at times.
Yeah,
I've been doing this for a while now, where I've been able to kind of fine tune all of that and
sure.
stay organized. I think with what I do, it correlates so well, to being a coach.
Sure.
because all I really do and all I really do with my job is I coach people and educate them on the home buying process.
Sure.
So my coaching background and being able to articulate things um, really helps me in what I do. And then it's all about writing game plans for, if it's a first time home buyer, I've worked with first time home buyers for years before they even buy a house, but where they are today. And if they want to buy a house in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, okay, let's write up a game plan. Let's see where you're at today. And let's, make some goals for yourselves so that you can accomplish your goals and become a homeowner by your desired, home purchase date. And then also on the back end, so with being a homeowner, um, you're essentially taking out a loan against the property, and that loan is essentially your biggest debt. So what I do, as well as I work a lot with all my past clients, and really because your mortgage is going to be your biggest debt, and it's a matter of managing that debt,
Sure.
how to leverage that debt and that loan to help you build wealth for yourself, for your future, for your family. So when you buy a house, it doesn't end there.
Right.
The whole game plan continues to go on, and that's something that I take pride in, making sure that I am staying in contact with all my past clients for the life of their for their lives, to be able to manage that leverage in that loan. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. That definitely, like you said, that definitely sounds like a coach, man. You'll be back in the game pretty soon. I can feel it. I can
yeah,
feel it. Your former coaches are like, he'll be back. We'll get him sooner or later. Because
yeah,
the way you broke that down, man, it did sound like you were drawing up a game plan.
yeah, man. I miss it. It honestly, you're asking if it's hard to it's hard for me to watch football and not and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because when I watch football, I I look at the coverages. I look at the coverages. I look at the formations, and I can't just be a spectator and enjoy
Sure.
it
Sure.
as entertainment. And I remember when I coaching at Cal Poly, I remember looking over at Jake Jeffrey, who was a former high school quarterback as well. Went to Cal Poly. I had the chance to coach him, but he was a junior or senior, and I remember looking at him in a meeting one day, and I was just like, I hope I'm ruining watching football for you. He's like, oh, definitely. I can't even watch football anymore without looking at the techniques
Yeah.
of the tackles and what coverage, what the safeties are doing. He's like, I'll never be able to watch football again the same. So it's hard to just watch it for entertainment, but it's cool to watch the chess match as well.
That's funny. That actually, I'm glad you said that because I have another podcast where it's not sports related specifically, but it's just, we interview people from all walks of life. And one of the questions I ask, either like, if it's a graphic designer or someone who does film or music, that's one of the questions I actually ask him is like, hey, can you watch a movie? Like if you're a filmographer, can you watch a movie these days, like and enjoy it? Or are you constantly breaking down every part of it? Or, hey, you're a musician. Can you listen to a song and really enjoy it? I've never even thought about asking a coach that, but I'm going to start asking that moving forward. Um, because I imagine that'd be difficult because I'm watching a game on a Sunday and just enjoying it. I don't really know what's going on. I know what's good and what's bad, but I couldn't
Right.
break it. I couldn't break the game down like you do. I can barely play Madden sometimes. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
man. Yeah.
um that would be, yeah, such a weird thing. But see, that's for me, like with podcasting, sometimes that happens with me in podcasting though. I'll listen, I'm like, that was okay. That was great. Oh, I want to steal that because that was really good. So it's interesting, man, when you're passionate about something, it changes the whole way you view it and the way you enjoy it.
Yeah, I see. This might sound weird, but I'll see colors on the field. So if I'm watching a football game, I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I see I remember things by colors and shapes and numbers. So to me, cover three is green, cover two is blue, cover four is yellow. So if when I'm watching the game, if I see safeties and corners start to get to their zone drops, I'll just be like, okay, that's the yellow, and you know what I mean. I don't know why my brain thinks that way, but I'll see colors on the field. Um,
That's wild.
yeah,
I'm telling you, man, like I don't play Madden very much, but next time I do, I need you sitting right next to me. So that way I don't look like an idiot when I'm playing this game because I'm terrible.
Yeah,
So
you know what I'm talking about? Like on Madden, when you like when you're selecting your plays and you see where the zones are going
yeah,
of the coverages, that's kind of what I visualize in my head in different colors as I see safety start to tip things off.
that's insane. That's awesome though. Well, there you go. That explains why you're good. You were good on the field. You're good as a professional. You know, now in your career now, it makes sense. You see things differently.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I do not. Mine's it's just it's like a jumbled mess of nonsense. Like I just gotta make it through this day. Um, so man, I know we're up against it. I told you 45 minutes. We're over a little bit. Two more questions for you. One quick one and then a bigger one that we'll finish up on. But usually I asked this a little bit earlier. Growing up, and maybe even now, who is your all time favorite football player?
My all-time favorite football player. You know, I've never really had a favorite, but
Really?
I have had a most impressive player I've ever played with.
That's even better. Let's hear it.
And that is Tyler Trosine.
Got
I
it.
don't know
Okay.
if you remember Tyler Trosine.
Yeah,
Uh,
the family well known at Folsom
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Tanner was a quarterback as well. He was younger than we were, but Tyler was my age, and he was the most phenomenal athlete I've ever played any sport with, and that's at all levels of football. He was something else, and if you ask anyone else from that team, they would all say the same thing.
Wow.
He's by far the most phenomenal football player I've ever been on the field with.
That's crazy that you say that because my last interview a couple weeks ago I did with Matt Johnson, who's the head basketball coach at Sac High, and he said something. He said the best athlete he ever played with was his high school teammate. I'm blank on the on his teammate's name, but I mean, he basically said a very similar thing that you just said, and that's so interesting because he played at a couple different levels as well. And you would think, oh, maybe there was a college guy that he played against or played with that would have stood out, but it was a high school guy that he played with, and same for you. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I played against Cooper Cup in college. Granted, we didn't play. He was on the offensive side of the ball as well, so we didn't actually play against each other. But I've been in games with big names, and I still believe Tyler is the greatest athlete I've ever been around. And that I mean, and there's so much talent from my senior year. Jordan Richards, he played in the league for I want to say 6 or 7 years.
Sure.
Um, Corey Babineau, all these huge names, and Tyler was just one step instinctually quicker than all of us, and he elevated our games as players. And he's who I looked up to growing up because he came from Rosemont. I want to say it was our Pee Wee year. I don't know how old that would have made us, maybe 11 years old. But he elevated all of our games when he came to Folsom. When we
Yeah.
played.
Yeah. I actually I don't think I don't remember watching him play. I'm sure I saw him, but I remember seeing the box scores the next day when he was playing and throughout his career, and it was just a different level. So the numbers. Um. So yeah. So that's interesting. So it's interesting. So no. But you didn't really have like a favorite athlete growing up. It was more, that's the guy that stood out. That's interesting. Again, man, you're dropping all these gems on me, answers I haven't gotten before. So I appreciate that. We're keeping it different than normal. So I appreciate that. Uh, Last question I have for you before we get out of here. It's kind of a big one, but I feel like it's an important one that we always like to ask at the very end. Uh, when it's all said and done, you look back at the end of your life and you look back at the totality of what you accomplished, what you did, the people's lives that you touched. What do you want your legacy to be?
Man, that's a tough question. Because I think there are still things that I would like my legacy to be, and that's not something that I think about really at all that much. Um, I guess I would say, um, not even necessarily a legacy, but just the fact that when it comes to accomplishing something in sports, I really, really believe the foundation of success comes from culture, camaraderie, and specifically within that culture is belief. And you look at, former why am I blanking his name, 49ers coach Bill Walsh,
Sure.
that famous saying that always stuck with me when I was in high school was that champions behave like champions before they're champions, right?
Hmm.
You don't just get to the end of a March Madness bracket, or you don't just get to the end of a, section championship, state championship and win it. And then you're surprised. Oh, we just like, it's not a surprise, right? Because you have a cultural and you have a sense of, priorities amongst you and your teammates and one common goal that you have set in front of yourselves way before that point.
Right.
And in order to get to that point, you have to believe that you can get there. And I remember my senior year, um, winning state was the only thing we thought about. And Folsom High School hadn't even won a section championship at this time in 20 years. And we were just a public school. So we really didn't have any right to believe that, but we had belief. We knew that would happen. We could visualize it happening. And I remember every single day after practice, I would drive out of the parking lot with the windows down and yell out the windows, to my teammates who were getting undressed and loading things into the back of their trucks or cars or whatever. And I would just yell out state. And then the captain of the defense, Sam Lucan, would yell out state, and then it would just echo down. Like it was just like state, like that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's really important to have belief. And I'm really into studying culture and cultural behaviors and what it takes to have success within a common group of men. So for my legacy, I would say that just leadership and being able to instill those principles within a group of people. But that's my legacy is something that I want to continue to build on. I wouldn't even say I've accomplished that yet. I would say as I do get back into coaching, that's something that I want to be able to inflict on the people I surround myself with.
I love it. I love it. I got lied. I got one more question for you, just because of basically what you just said. I'm guessing you're a reader. Am I right about that? You like to read?
I do read. I do read here and there. It kind of comes in waves. Like I'll go months where I can't stop reading, and then I'll go months where I won't pick anything up. But I definitely do, comes in waves. Yeah.
All right, man. So based on what you just said about culture, leadership, and you being fascinated by culture and how it works, give us a book recommendation. What's a book that you would recommend for maybe a coach or even an athlete, but something that would benefit them when it comes to this idea of understanding and developing culture?
Okay, so one great one. I don't know the author, and it wasn't a specific coach that wrote it, but it's titled "You Win in the Locker Room First."
Okay.
It's predicated around the sport of football, and then Urban Meyer's book.
Okay.
I don't know the title off the top of my head. I just know it as Urban Meyer's, the book that Urban Meyer wrote about culture and the 2014 Ohio State championship team.
Sure.
That's a great read. And more importantly, all those principles come from a man of, it's not Jim Rohn. Maybe I can get back to you on that later. But
Sure.
So Urban Meyer actually hired this guy. I can't remember his name. He hired him for the sole purpose of coming into the football program and instilling cultural behavior. His only job was to do that. And this was after the 2013. He came in. They won the national championship that next year. And it's so fascinating, the power of belief and the power of culture and the power of leadership within a program. Urban Meyer hired this guy. They then wrote a book after that 2014 season, and it's mind blowing. It'll change, young athletes' lives. If you're a quarterback, you're a leader by default. If you're not a leader, then you're not a quarterback. But even if you're, captain in different sports, whatever it may be, I really suggest getting into those philosophies. Changed my life.
Perfect. That's a good place to end this thing. Dano, man, where can they follow you? Maybe if they have questions about coaching, maybe they're looking into buying or selling their home and that whole world, like where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I would say Instagram. I'm not huge on social media. I never really check my Facebook. I'm probably most I'm checking my Instagram the most. I'm still working on growing that. I feel like I don't have those. I'm getting older. I feel like, and Instagram was kind of after I learned how to use it. So I'm still figuring out how to use that for marketing and whatnot. But yeah, reach out to me on Instagram. I'll get back to you. Whether it's about buying or selling a home, about just quarterback questions in general. Maybe you're a young athlete out there that wants to just pick my brain, or maybe even get together on the field and go over a couple things. If you have questions on a certain, you know, fundamental, I'm happy to do whatever I can to just help this community grow.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, we appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and let me pick your brain a little bit about the good old days of Folsom High School and then everything you're doing now, man. And just uh, this is definitely going to help some people for sure, man. Hearing your perspective and your insight on not just the game but life as well. So, man, I definitely appreciate it. And man, we look forward to one day when I can interview you from the coaching perspective.
Right.
And I'm sure it won't be too long before you get back into that world. But
I hope so,
um,
man. Well, thanks so much for having me.
yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing for this Sacramento community, and getting us all involved and supportive to all these athletes out there that are have their aspiration dreams and all their dreams ahead of them. Really, anything we can do to give back and help people achieve those goals. Thank you for doing that. So
Yeah, man, absolutely. We do it because of awesome people like you, man. So thank you so much and good luck with everything moving forward.
yeah, likewise. Have a good one.